All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of our Teaching and Learning Center here at K-State. We're so excited that you've made your way to our professional development series. And we're going to begin today with a land acknowledgement.
Okay, Don, give me a thumbs up when you see what I want you to see here. Okay, perfect. Here we go.
As the first land grant institution established under the 1862 Morrill Act, we acknowledge that the state of Kansas is, historically, home to many native nations, including the Kaw, Osage, and Pawnee, among others. Furthermore, Kansas is the current home to 4 federally recognized native nations: the Prairie Band Potawatomi, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, and the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri in Kansas and Nebraska.
Many native nations utilized the western plains of Kansas as their hunting grounds, and others, such as the Delaware, were moved through this region during Indian removal efforts to make way for white settlers. It's important to acknowledge this, since the land that serves as the foundation of this institution was, and still is, stolen land.
We remember these truths because K-State's status as a land-grant institution is a story that exists within ongoing settler colonialism and rests on the dispossession of indigenous peoples and nations from their lands. These truths are often invisible to many. The recognition that K-State's history begins and continues through indigenous contexts is essential.
Please remember,
These truths,
because we still remember.
Thank you. The Teaching and Learning Center offers a professional development series every Wednesday at noon over Zoom, and you found your way here in real time. That's great. But we also record these events for asynchronous viewing. So if you have a colleague who can't be here but needs to know the stuff we're talking about, and today's event is actually a needs to know event, you can check that out on our website. That'll be uploaded later this afternoon. If you come to enough of these events, write us a little reflection, you can earn a TLC Professional Development Certificate. And my colleague Ashley is going to drop the details for that in the chat. We have professional development certificates both for graduate students as well as for faculty and staff. And if you're a faculty member, we also have the opportunity that you could potentially become a TLC Fellow and potentially present in our series next year. And that would be fantastic. Next week, we have an amazing event from Chase Jordan. They will be talking about interculturally responsive pedagogy. Chase is a wonderful presenter, and I'm really excited for their visit. But today I'm super excited as well because we have Andy Thompson here today from the Office of Student Support and Accountability, formerly the Office of Student Life. I still am working on getting it right every time I say it. But one of the things that I really love about being the TLC is we get to reach out and work with campus partners who are super committed to promoting the success for our students. And Andy is one of those people who was just born to do this job. His demeanor and disposition, he is the perfect dude to do this. And I'm so excited that he's here to share today about how we follow through on the promise of support. As I mentioned before, this is a need to know event because we think it's that important. Andy, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, thanks Don for the introduction. I love coming and doing this event. I love that you all show up to this event, this presentation. This is not an event, but I'm happy to spend some time here today. It's a presentation, so I'll be sharing my screen, and so, but if you have questions along the way or comments along the way, please feel free to just kind of jump in. I'll try to pay attention, or Don or Ashley, if you could help me monitor chat or anything like that, let me know. That'd be really helpful. But otherwise, we'll just get going here. I'll go ahead and share my screen. But like I said, if you've got anything you want to share as we go, please do not hesitate to jump on in. Proactively do that. But all right. Are you all seeing my PowerPoint there? Excellent. I got a thumbs up from Ashley. So yeah, just as Don said, just a reminder, we're student support and accountability now instead of Office of Student Life. That's less, we're coming up on a year on that change. So if I accidentally say Office of Student Life, or literally right before I got on here, I caught a slide that still said Office of Student Life, I apologize, but we were that office for like 20 plus years. So it's a hard habit to break. So I'm here today to kind of talk to you about both philosophically what we do to support our students and help you all support our students, as well as some of the policies that are involved in that process and things that kind of tell us what we have to do. So First off, here's the mission of the Office of Student Support and Accountability. Here's how I define our mission. We're here to help out, and help can look a lot of different ways for everybody. Help can sometimes be a really simple solve. Help can be a really complicated solve. And so we're here to help our students. We're here to help you all help our students. And so I tell students all the time that if you don't know where to start, please start with us. If you feel like you've been everywhere and either haven't got the answer you think you should have, or maybe weren't treated correctly along the way, or you just want to verify that everything was done up to standard, come see us. Like that's our role within the office, is to do that. Just some quick facts about the office. Last year we served just over 3,200 students. I will tell you that 32 to 3,600 is probably about where we are. The COVID years, we saw some real big spikes in service numbers, but that 32 to 3,600 seems to be the amount of students that come and see us for a variety of reasons. Of that 3,200, 867 of them landed on our plate from a student of concern process. And we're going to go into depth about what student of concern means and how we define that down the road here and what we do with that. The quick definition, so you know, student of concern is somebody else puts that student on our radar. So it could be a student's missed 10 days of classes and hasn't responded back. It could be a student told you that their mom just got diagnosed with terminal cancer and they may need to go home for the semester and they're not sure what to do with that, and anything in between. And so you may fill out a student concern so that we can do some proactive outreach here. And again, we'll go more in depth on that in a little bit. You can see here, though, we ended up with this big jump when we went from, we 16, 17 there, around 400 or 500. And then we saw some big leaps here, but we have maintained pretty steady in this 800-900 range. So maybe that's where we're going to be balancing on that student of concern. So who is within SSA? I've got the team here on the screen, and we've been really fortunate the last few years to get some funding from SGA for some temporary positions, from some campus partners to really be able to expand our services. We've been creative in some of our staffing, and some of these folks are 9-month employees, so we can be creative in how we're serving our students. But you'll see the 4 deans on the screen, as well as Kim and Devin and Amy. So you all know we divide our workflow by academic college, and we do that so that, Nathan, you're on my screen, so that when Nathan calls in, he's going to be talking to the dean and the coordinator that's connected to his college. And so our dean can understand when a student sits down and says to us, I'm in human body, we understand what that means, right? We understand how hard that class is and the impact that class can have on a GPA. Laurel has worked with the College of Engineering her whole time in this office, and so she knows those programs. She knows those professors to be able to connect intentionally there. And so if you are calling in, if you're reaching out, you're like, man, I always seem to get Laurel or I always get Janelle. Well, it could be that that's the college that's connected there, right? You don't have to only talk to them, but that's how we try to divide our workflow up. Haley and Steph in the case manager position, we're in our 3rd year of case management. You can see they're actually housed out in our residential communities. They are designed to work with students that need kind of that high touch, high need, that kind of weekly meeting to help skill build and get them to find that success here. And so they primarily work with students that live within those residential communities. Doesn't have to be that. So we've got some off-campus students that need that case management approach. They can connect there. You just submit a student of concern to us and we'll take it from there. You can put a note in that says, I think case management would be great. Could be a chance they're already working with us, right? And so then you're just adding another piece to the puzzle and how we're serving those students. Additionally, within our team and our office suite, Sarah Barr, student legal services attorney, has been at the university over 20 years, part of student fees. So if you've got a student who's having any sort of landlord-tenant issues, lower level legal issues, they can actually come see Sarah free of charge and she will give that legal advice. If it's a situation that needs to be referred out to another lawyer, Sarah will happily do that referral process. And so you don't necessarily need to worry about what she can or can't see. Just know that's available to students. And then Dr. Camilla Roberts from Honor Integrity is part of the SSA umbrella now. And so another terrific resource in terms of some of those accountability pieces that we might cover here down the road. I do want, for those of you who have seen this presentation before, this will be a big shift. This is a different video than I normally play. So we're gonna play this video here just to kind of set the tone a little bit. It's about 4 minutes long, so it's a little lengthier. I'll give you a little bit of a trigger warning in the sense that I had a campus partner who watched this in another presentation and said she teared up during the video. And so just a heads up, it's kind of setting the tone for us. But I'm going to go ahead and click on this and we'll make sure that the share screen and the sound is working fine. And then we'll watch this. This is a video out of the Cleveland Clinic that they actually use to help train their staff on empathy and patient care. And I think there's a lot of potential crossover. Ashley, are you seeing my video on the screen? Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead here and share this and kind of set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. Okay. I think hopefully that sets the tone a little bit for the conversation today. I think that's Don, I'll be open to your feedback after the presentation on how that one maybe hits too hard or not hard enough. You know, I think obviously that was a video for a hospital community and caring for patients, right? But I see a lot of similarities and parallels to some of the things our students and those of us on this call are facing from day to day, right? And I think we saw very, very big issues, smaller issues. We saw celebrations and positive things, right? And I think so as we're having this discussion today, keep that in mind, right? And so some items here that I asked you to keep in mind today as we're working with our students. Life happens usually at the worst times, right? Like we know while our students are here and while we are here as professional staff members, life is going to show up in some way, shape, or form. And just to be mindful of that, you know, we ask that you meet the student where they are. You know, there are some students that it's their third time taking a class and they're just trying to get the darn D just to get it off their degree plan and so they can graduate. And that's okay, right? Sometimes that's okay. And to understand that piece, that's not a shot at you as a professor, that sometimes that's just their survival technique because they just gotta keep pushing forward. Grace and understanding go a long way as we're interacting with one another as human beings on this planet, as students in our classroom, as coworkers in our environment. Students are in more than just your class or just one class oftentimes. And so I explain to students as they are even trying to figure out how they catch up that if they're in 12 hours and they've missed 2 weeks of classes for whatever reason, and they go to start having conversations with faculty about what they can take on and what they can put on their plate, while they're in those 12 hours and then trying to catch up in 12 hours, they're in 24 hours of classes. And I don't know that any of us would recommend a student to be in 24 credit hours. And so to understand that as long as we're in that, like that's what we're trying to do, because that 12 hours doesn't stop going while you're playing catch up. And so as you're working with students to just keep that in mind, I think outside the box on solutions. Sometimes maybe there are some alternatives, right? Like, is there a different type of paper, or is there a presentation, or what can we do to think outside the box to help our students move forward? I ask you to pay attention. You're going to see some slides here in a second about recognizing the student in crisis, and a lot of that just comes from paying attention to another human on the planet. And then also recognize that not all crises are loud. We can name those really loud ones that just we wake up and it hits us in the face. But sometimes we end up in this loud kind of crisis moment after maybe years of small things or weeks of small things that just build up to where we no longer can handle that. And so to keep that in mind today as we're talking. So how do you recognize a student in crisis or a student who needs support? We're not going to walk through all of these because some of these I think are fairly like logical. But I think it's, you know, how are you building on relationships that exist, right? Is that maybe you're the student's advisor, so you know them well. Maybe you teach a class that only has 10 or 12 students. Maybe you have the student in 3 or 4 classes. Maybe the student sits in a class of 200. And you're like, Andy, I don't personally know this student. Well, how do you maybe utilize a grade book, right? An attendance sheet. They used to perform really highly, now they're low. They used to come to class and now they don't. They're not responsive to the email. They're not responding on the chat. What are some of these pieces that you can just pay attention to, right? I always kind of joke about the disheveled appearance, right? I'm not talking about that freshman year beard that they grow, but they haven't showered, right? Like they're not taking care of themselves. Like if you're starting to see some of this stuff, this is when it's time to either do a student of concern or just to reach out to the student and say, hey, just wanted to check in on you and see how you're doing, right? My personal philosophy is if my child, my brother, my best friend approached me and was exhibiting some of this stuff or exhibiting some of these issues, would I let them walk away without asking them if they're okay? And if the answer is no, then that's what we should be doing for our students, right? I'm not asking you to solve their problems, right? I'm asking you to be a partner in that. and to get it over to the offices that can help. But these are the sort of things I'm asking you to just kind of pay attention to with our student body. So once you've identified some of that, how do you assist them, right? Well, you're building on your established relationship, right? You may already have a relationship and that student trusts you. Like I have a lot of students that the SOC comes from a trusted professor. And maybe that trusted professor comes to the meeting with us because it feels comfortable to have that support person with them. You're relating observations to them, right? Like, hey, this is, normally you're here, you're responsive, you're doing your work. I've noticed that you haven't been showing up, maybe not taking care of yourself. Like, is there something going on that I can help with? Right? Maybe they respond. Maybe they tell you right there on the spot. Maybe they say yes, and I don't know where else to go. Well, I do. Let me help connect you. Normalizing help. I just, I am so pumped this university has taken the step to do the Wildcat Pause Day for our students, because I don't think it'll just be a pause day for students. I think it'll be a pause day for all of us too, like to just kind of catch our breath, maybe meet with some students that need some one-on-one interaction, get some connection points. But I think normalizing mental health, physical health, overall well-being, if I got a leak in the roof of my house, this is on mine because I just had a roofer at my house this morning. I'm not getting on the roof. I'm terrified of heights. I'm not fixing the roof of my house. I'm going to make a phone call and somebody else is going to come do that, right? Normalizing help in society, normalizing help with our own well-being, normalizing help that if you ask, you're going to have a fairly positive response. I think that's really critically important to our campus community and society as a whole, really, at this point. And then know your referrals, right? Is that to your academic dean's office? Is that up to SSA, CAPS, Family Center, TELUS Health? Do they live in housing and dining? They live in housing and dining. They got a bunch of resources there, right? RAs, grad students, professional staff, the case managers. And I think what's also important about assisting students is how are you taking care of yourself, right? Like, I don't want to downplay that students are the only ones that are having struggles, because I know we all show up every day. That video showed it. We all show up every day with our own stuff, and that can have impact on capacities and how we serve and how we help and how we're there for students. So just be mindful of how you're showing up in a space. Okay. So the student of concern report, we've had this around for a while, about 10 years now. If you were to fill this out, the easiest way to do it is just hop online and fill out the form. Some of you on this call have filled these out for us. We think it's a pretty easy process. You have the ability to mark if it's low, medium, or high. Obviously, there's health and safety issues. You need to call us, call the police. But if you mark it and there's like some suicidal stuff, we're gonna jump on that right away. The high reports come to every single one of us in the office, so that one of us gets eyeballs on it immediately. All the low and medium reports go to the dean on call for the week, as well as our coordinators to make sure we're reaching out. And depending on what's going on, we're going to send that student an email. We're going to call them. If we need to do a welfare check, we may be calling parents to check in on that. We are going to be doing multiple outreaches to try to get a student connected if you are putting them on our radar, right? And depending on what's going on there will depend on kind of the urgency of all of those pieces. And so just know that that's coming. I will share with you from a student of concern piece. We are here in a couple of weeks. Every faculty and staff member at the university will be receiving a student of concern postcard that's going to have the QR code that'll take you right to our website for resources and right to the form. The goal is, some of you that have been around a while have received this before. Some of you that have been around a long while would have received our big folder that we used to send out. And so we haven't done that since COVID. And so everyone's going to be getting a refreshed new look card that you can just keep in your offices for a quick reference guide to be able to get to those resources. If you're working with a student and, I'm throwing a lot at you today, but you're just like, I'm not sure some of these pieces, you can go visit our website. This is just a screenshot of it, of how you support students in distress. Some drop down, how do you start the conversation, resources, again, a link to our student concern page. So don't hesitate to go check that out. If you're just like, I don't know that I need to tag anybody else in right now, but I just want to learn more resources. Our website, I think, is laid out in a way that's easy to navigate that. And then this is just a screenshot of our student of concern form. So you can see that it's not a scary document to fill out. It really does not take any time at all. once you scroll down, there's some boxes you can click. We have adjusted it in the last few months, where we ask a box of what have you already done, right? Like, well, I've already had the conversation with the student. I've tried to connect them to resources or whatever that needs to look like. That just gives us some more context as we're starting that conversation with the student. Some policies. So, we don't have a creative name now, right? We're student support and accountability. And so as we think about some of the accountability pieces, because I think that is still important, for sure. I share this with, there's a threat management policy that I chair for students. So if you ever have a concern that's kind of like of threatening behavior, obviously call the police, but just know there is a policy on campus where we can engage our threat management team to address issues quickly. Okay. PPM 3010 is our OIE. So Justin Frederick's office with Title IX. I think we've all been through some of those trainings, know that exist. I do want you all to know, because this is fairly new, the social media policy. So if there's ever social media concerns that kind of come to light for you, you can send that over to me. And we do have the ability to engage social media behavior through some of our established policies or through just educational conversations with a student, to just say, hey, you absolutely can say what you want to say on social media in this regard. Just know the alarm that you're causing, or let's have a conversation about what 19-year-old you is doing and potential blowback that 39-year-old you may wish didn't exist, to help have some of those conversations. We are just now in year 2 of bringing our student organizations back into the university fold. And so please know there are student organization conduct policies, event registration policies and whatnot, to where we're able to have conversations with a student organization about behaviors that might be occurring. And I think that's been last year was a successful year for that, and been really happy with how that rolled out. As well as then student of the code of conduct that Dean Allie Coleman in my office oversees, in terms of some of those lower level pieces, or if you've got classroom kind of issues going on, that might be more appropriate than some of these other pieces. There's a shameless plug at the end, but I'll go ahead and give it now. On Friday, September 27th, from 9 to 11 on Zoom, myself and Dr. Ryan Van Duzen will be doing our threat management policy training. And so anyone can sign up on HRIS. We go in depth about that threat management policy as well as some other policies with the processes for that, as well as other university resources available. And so if you just have an interest in that, you can sign up. If you're a department head, you should probably sign up, because from a faculty staff threat management side, you would likely be the person called in to be part of that team. Or as a department head, you may be called into the critical incident response team if we have an elevated student concern going on within your area. So I've got some information on the last slide in written format of what I just announced there. Some other reporting pieces. This website, ksu.edu/report, I think everyone should have bookmarked. It has all of the incident reporting forms you may need, whether that's student of concern, code of conduct, threat management, reporting an issue with a minor, honor integrity, name the report. It's right there, easy to grab and use. Okay. There are also some great resources there. The Cleary report and some of the other resourcing pieces that the university has to have available online, all right there on that webpage. And so if you don't have that bookmarked, I would really recommend that you do that. I kind of highlight these 3 offices because OIE, we are all mandated reporters when it comes to anything that might fall underneath Title 6, 7, or 9. So I think it's important to always highlight that office, my office, and then the CARE office, which is our confidential office that works with students, faculty, and staff who may be survivors or secondary survivors of dating violence, domestic violence, sexual harassment, or stalking. And so if you need a confidential place to go and talk about that, talk about resources, talk about policies, the CARE office is available. And again, I want to reiterate, that's available for faculty and staff as well, not just our student population. I added this in just because I think in our campus community right now, in our local community, there have been a few incidents that have caused some alarm for just general safety pieces, with some incidents that have occurred. And so I just wanted to to reiterate the Rave Guardian app that is available for all of us. Rave is the system that we use for campus alerts as well. But if you don't have the Rave app downloaded, I do think it's a good thing for folks to have, especially to share with our students. You know, there's a virtual safe walk, which I think is really cool, that you could lock in with somebody and they can follow you on GPS within the app and make sure you get to where you need to go. And if God forbid something happens, then it's right there and captured. Folks, you can live text the police on this. And so if you're walking along and see something, you can actually shoot a text and it goes right to the dispatch on those pieces, as well as there's a resource directory, a one-click 911. It's just a really solid app that I think we've got to get out there and get more people connected to. So I added that in here this year just because I wanted to highlight that piece. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip this video here, but a good chunk of you, how you're going to interact with us is through our letters that we send you as faculty. And so I want to spend a little time here, and also if folks have opinions on this, I'd love to hear it. But there's a couple different letters that you will get from us as we're trying to support students, right? So I started this presentation very much challenging all of us to come from an empathetic standpoint, from we're people, let's love on people, let's care about one another. I also recognize, and we recognize in this office very, very clearly, that sometimes you can't, right? Like sometimes there are policies, sometimes there are structures to courses, sometimes there's accreditations that limit things. And so please know that as we're discussing with students that we recognize that with them and try to operate in a very realistic expectation with them. One of the letters you're going to get from us is our excused absence letter. And you can see here on the screen what actually falls in excused absences through the excused absence policy. You'll also notice that new this year are two other categories, right? So the specialist appointments and severe health concern appointments. I'm really excited that we got these added in here. I know some folks on this call were part of Faculty Senate that helped vote this through. And so, and some folks on this call helped get this policy stood up to begin with a few years ago. So I want to highlight specialist appointments and severe health concerns. Those were added from a space of true care and concern for our community. I will give a personal example of, we had a student who was hit by a car on a Saturday night before finals week last year. And when I called that family to check in on the student, talk through things, they gave me the health update, but the first thing they asked me about was what's going to happen with her finals, right? And last fall, what I had to say to them was, I'm going to email the professors and ask them to work with her. And the professors go, what do you mean ask? And I said, well, now, thankfully at K-State, that's usually not an issue, right? So the professors absolutely worked with that student. We did incomplete, she recovered and she got her finals done, right? But that felt crappy, right? That felt crappy. And so we were able to work in here with the extended hospital stay and severe health stuff. So whether that's a mental health stay or a physical health stay or something, that is now an excused absence. I want to be really clear, though, it also includes a statement that if a student has missed too much time, that you all can point that student back to us and we will talk about if incompletes or withdrawals are a better option, because sometimes that's the better option. But I do think it gives us a space to be able to say I had a student just last week who really needed to go to a mental health hospital. She was not doing well. And because I could look at her and say, this is part of the excused absence policy now, and I can send an excused absence, she went to the hospital. And I don't think she would have gone if I was not able to say that to her. And she'll be back. She'll be back starting next week and ready to go. And so I think that's really important. Specialist appointments were added because there's lots of examples of these. The one that I will give is as we think about how we serve our military and our veteran population, them getting appointments at the VA is not super simple. And sometimes they are told 4 months from now will be your appointment. And if they have to move that, it could be another 3 or 4 months. And that could happen for other specialist appointments for us. And so this, again, is just from a care concern, how we're really helping our community balance that health and well-being and be a health promoting university. So you will get that letter from us. You will also get another letter from us if you pay attention that is our verified absence letter. And there is a significant difference, right? The excuse says the policy says we have to do this. The verified says SSA is verified something's going on and we just ask you to work with them. I want you all to hear that if a student comes to you and asks you and has a discussion, if you really can't work with them, just be honest, right? Shoot a message back. Let's have this discussion, right? It comes down to how we serving each other, how we serving the students, and that's okay. But again, if we can work with them, why not, right? Like, why not? So that's that piece there. When I share some quick resources with you, CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, you know, they're not as staffed as we would like them to be, but I think they're doing a really nice job managing what's going on for our students. Free for our students. They have group therapy, drug and alcohol services. I do want to highlight TELUS Health, which is the 24/7 app that a student can download and talk to a therapist right there on the spot, multiple languages. TELUS apps, notes go into CAPS. And so a therapist at CAPS is able to see that. Anyone that does a report with TELUS, one of our therapists at CAPS follows back up with that student to see if they're interested in coming into the on-campus environment anyway. And so I think that's helpful to know. Along with that, I want to highlight the Family Center, which is a terrific other option on campus here for our students to receive therapy. That's also faculty and staff available. Small fee associated with that, but for therapy, it is totally reasonable. An amazing cost there, an amazing service from the Family Center there. I do want to highlight the Morrison Family Center for Wellbeing, which, if you weren't aware, just moved locations from Lafine Health Center to actually the Union. And so they overlook that courtyard there. They've got some new window clings and really stand out. You can see some of the programs that they offer there. And again, that's, I think, really tying into our health promoting university that we're going with and how we proactively looking at well-being as a campus community as we engage with one another. And then Lafine Health Center, obviously a full medical clinic here available to students, faculty, and staff for any of the needs that folks may need. The other piece here, resources, CAT's covered, again, kind of a no questions asked food pantry, beautiful new facility. If you've not been over to CAT's covered, I highly recommend you go check it out. I think it is top of the line, first class. We wish we didn't need it, but because we do need it, it's super great that we have a resource like that for folks on campus. We know food insecurity is a very real issue that our students are facing. And so it's good to have that resource and for you all to know that resource exists. PowerCat Financial Counseling, it's been an unbelievable growth with some of the partnerships with the academic units that PowerCat is doing. And so, you know, they've got remote kind of office setups for folks around, or satellite setups for folks around campus for our students to really go learn and increase their financial literacy that they are receiving as students here. Academic Achievement Center here for tutoring, academic coaches, and then the Student Access Center we know is an amazing resource for our students who need accommodations of any type there. The last couple that I just want to hit on, CARE, we've talked about. The Morris Family Multicultural Student Center there right next to the Union is a great resource, and the Spectrum Center, formerly the LGBT Resource Center, a great space for students to just hang out and engage. We are, unfortunately, Dr. Brandon Haddock, who literally stood that center up, is moving on to another opportunity, and so that'll be a big gap for us. But you know, Dr. Haddock put the Spectrum Center in an amazing place as they are getting ready to head on to new opportunities. I also want to highlight here the Military Affiliated Resource Center. For those of you that don't know, that center actually moved into what is now, or the former Cat's Paws, which is on the second floor there of the Union. We have been really fortunate to get a grant to create a center for excellence for how we serve our military and veteran population. And so we were able to hire a full-time director, an academic specialist that's in the center, counselor at CAPS who will specialize in working with that population. And Amanda Etter, the director, is doing some amazing work in how we serve our military students and bringing some key groups together so that we're all we're all rowing the same direction in terms of how we're serving that population. And so if you haven't been to the new Mark, you should pop over to the Union, check out the Wellbeing Center and the Mark, because they're two really neat spaces now that have just really opened up. So just as a recap, I just want to share this slide of kind of how we try to approach the work that we do with our students. We absolutely could not do our work without the partnerships that you all have, the care and compassion and concern that you all have. I know that sometimes we make some pretty big ask to you in terms of how you support your students, and we appreciate that. Genuinely, if there are ever times that we are making these asks to you and you're like, I can't do that for whatever reason, pick up the phone and call us. Like, my favorite conversations are with faculty after I send a letter, because what that does is oftentimes we find the middle ground, or I may be able to be a resource to you too, to say, yeah, I can help that student with that conversation, or maybe a withdrawal is what we need to do and we can help with that. It also just makes me and my staff better at how we work with students, right? The more we kind of understand that context, the better we can serve folks in that regard. All of us. This is just a real quick screenshot of our newly developed website. Laurel Moody here in our office did a great job developing this for us. And so I just want to show, we actually have gotten to the point with a lot of our presentations, we just pull our website up and walk through each of these boxes. And so we've got it really broken down here in our 4 main categories. And so if at any point, I threw a lot at you today, you just hop on our website, and I think it's a really pretty clean, easy way to navigate and walk through what is the student support, what is the conduct side of the house. I will also say, we are always, for those of you that would be interested, would love to come out and present to departments, would love to come out and present to classrooms. We're always happy to do that. And so do not hesitate to reach out if that's something you think would be helpful or of interest to you. And then just a reminder, we're here for you, right? Like, we're here for the students, but we're here to process with you, to think through things. How do we problem solve things? And there's my shameless plug. And so if you're interested in that threat management, I do recommend it. I think it's helpful, but at this point, I will probably stop sharing my screen and open it up for any questions or comments.
So Andy, I'm going to chime in and say, number one, that video hit pretty hard early on, but it probably hit the appropriate amount of hard. It was definitely a good model for understanding other people's situations. So the question, and I've asked you this question before, but I think it's always good for other people to kind of hear answers. What are some of the biggest resistances that you're kind of seeing in faculty kind of being accommodating for the kinds of things that we're kind of asking, right? Student misses my class. What is the faculty resistance to kind of working with the student?
I'm not even sure. I think resistance is almost too strong of a word, Don. I think our student body and population right now is challenging us in a lot of ways. I mean, higher ed is not the most nimble place in terms of systematic changes that we do. But I think our students are challenging us in a positive way when we think about mental health, well-being. I need a mental health day. I need a well-being day. I just needed a break or a breath. They're challenging us, and they're asking for that. They're taking that. I don't know that our policies reflect a good way for us to help students in that regard. I think about attendance policies, right? Like, if you can miss 3 classes. Well, we got a student who's going to take some mental health days throughout. Well, then inevitably is when they're going to have the family emergency, where then they got to miss additional days. And so I think some of the resistance or hesitancy is just from, how do you manage all of that, right? Like, how do you manage from a place of care and concern for your student while balancing the academic integrity of your program, right? Like, I'll say to students, the point is to learn the material, not just get the A or the B. Like, the professor is here to make sure you learn the material. So we send you out into the world with a certain set of knowledge and skills. And so I think it's just how do we work together to balance like care for our student, but also that integrity piece of it. And I think I will say to all of you, and I say it to anybody, we are super fortunate at K-State because you all work with our students. And we are not out here arguing with faculty. We are not out here like being like, oh my gosh, Nathan, I'm gonna pick on you again. Nathan never worked with his students. What a pain in the butt. That is not what's occurring, right? Like that pushback, Don, is rare. It's rare because people show up to these sort of things. And I think people challenge each other from that K-State family, K-State community, K-State expectation really well.
So I'll follow it up by saying, okay, so the faculty are working with us. How do we get the students to go to your office? How do we get the students to use the resources that are there to support them? Because, there's definitely some hesitancy to do that in a lot of our students.
Yeah, I wish I had the magic answer, right? Like that's where I think I get back to more of like, how do we normalize that help is okay? And how are we consistently doing that, right? And I think we are not under-resourced, right? I think between SSA, the Wellbeing Center, I think CAPS, the Family Center, think about that list that I did, and that was a snapshot that didn't even touch on some of the resources that you all have within your academic dean area, right? But I think it is how are we consistently discussing with our students when we're seeing issues that it's okay to get that help. Here's who can get that help. If you don't know that office, like you personally, how do you connect with them so that you can say like, I know these professionals, I trust these professionals, I would love for you to go. I love getting student of concern referrals. I love getting student of concern referrals that also say, I talked to the student about your office, I encourage them to go and I vouched for you, right? Because if they've come to you because they trust you and now you say, I trust them, we're going to have a much higher percentage of getting that in. I also think it's how are you all consistently using it? So we got a new, the 1 minute survey that's going to be coming out, where we're asking all first year students to complete a 1 minute survey with a few questions, real quick, yes or no, being led up by Bill Watts in his area of DASA. How are you all supporting that, right? Is there an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to take class period here, take 5 minutes, get this survey done, right? Like, let's get that connected. And so I think that's a really quick, easy, here's resources. And is it at the start of every class, you highlight one helper office, right? As people are coming to class, it's up on a PowerPoint slide, like, hey, the office this day is well-being, the office this day is career center, the office is whatever, right? Like pick the resource. So how are you just putting it into your everyday language, I think is how we start to kind of turn that a little bit to get those helps.
And one thing I'll take an opportunity to kind of highlight for some folks here too is that on your syllabi, we have mandatory statements and those kind of things. We also have some optional statements. The University of SU's absence policy that Andy referenced is actually considered an optional statement. I'd invite us to put that on there and talk about what that means and why that's important. The statement on mental health will also be something that is an optional statement, but I invite you to put it on there and talk to your students and know what it means to kind of normalize the situation that sometimes if you're struggling, it's okay to reach out with help. And there's a number of other of those optional statements, things related to safe zone, for instance, to campus safety, to make your students aware of, because in normalizing this, I think faculty and staff and graduate teaching assistants and all of that, we play a big role in that normalization. And I think sometimes we don't seize that opportunity the way that we could. And Andy Faber mentions that she has those statements as Canvas course pages. That is fantastic. And I do strategic reminders in my class of, hey, remember this statement? Well, now is a period of time that's hard for people. It's mid-semester, end of the semester. Here's where things can pile up. So I'll remind you that we have these things available to you. Andy also talks about emailing them to students. So I've talked far too much. Are there any other questions or comments for Andy? Sarah.
So is there ever a point when we jump in too soon that we should be aware of?
Like in terms of helping a student?
Yeah. Or are some assumptions that people make that might not be a helpful assumption?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally don't believe there's ever a time to jump in too soon. If the issue is like not that big of a deal to a student, but we've engaged, that's fine. That's easy to fix, right? Or now that student at least knows like, oh, Sarah super cares. And holy cow, SSA reached out or whoever else reached out, right? Like I see Stacy Bailey on the call, right? Like international students and connecting with ISSS, right? I don't think there is a time too soon to engage and show care and concern. Like I think that's great. I think that, you know, you see this uptick in our student of concern reports back, you know, 5-6 years ago. I don't think that's because our students all of a sudden had more issues. I really don't. I think that that's when we started using Maxient to collect it. And I think that was an easier form than what we were doing. I also think that people started taking mental health seriously, right? Like we all have mental health. Like we all have mental health we have to manage, right? Some of us have, sometimes that mental health transitions into kind of diagnosable illnesses and things that need to be treated. But we all have mental health. We all have physical health. And so, but I think we started taking it more seriously to like engage it at a smaller level. So no, Sarah, I think anytime we can engage it and show that care, I'm all in for that.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Andy? All right, so as many of you are aware, we're trying to get down about 12:50 so people can get to their 1 o'clock. So we're a couple minutes over. I apologize for that. I want you to help me thank Andy Thompson for coming in and give us a wonderful presentation about how we can support our students and follow through on that promise for support. We find this very important. This is why it's Need to Know in our series. We've just posted into the chat a post-event survey that we'd love you to complete to kind of let us know what you thought of this event. I'll also remind you that if you do enough of these, you can get a professional development certificate. Next week, Chase Jordan is going to be talking to us about interculturally responsive pedagogy. Very excited for their visit next week, so please be here for that. If you have any questions, you can stick around for a second, but otherwise, thank you so much for attending our Professional Development Series event today. It was an event, in my opinion, Andy, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.